It's great to be joining Richard in this weekend program. Uh, I think he's one of the hardest working people in the entire field. I mean, he's built a huge network of communication and outreach, books, documentaries, podcasts, got it all, right? It just makes me tired thinking about Richard, how much he works. I'm very lazy. I just want to do a little activism, right? Get disclosure, move on. Okay, so I've got a little extra time. I'll see if I can squeeze something in. I want to start today with talking about activism, if I may. Boy, here's something that I think is true. I don't think there is a single right or privilege that we have in our country, and I think you could say this about any other country, that doesn't come from activism. It's virtually, they're hooked together. You can't have one without the other. The founding of the United States involved a great deal of activism. Before the revolution, there was many decades and decades of activism by individuals trying to get justice from the crown with respect to how they treated the colonies. And by the way, the word justice is always involved with activism. It's always about justice in some way or another, which is why King's phrase, which I believe I have right, I hope I do, holds so true, that the arc of the universe is long, but it tends towards justice. Notice it doesn't say tends toward happiness. It tends toward justice. Happiness is easy to get. You just take a pill. Justice takes a lot longer. And so when activism failed with respect to the needs of the colonies and justice, ultimately you had revolution. And revolution is also activism, but it's nasty. It's not the good trouble that John Lewis talks about. It's the bad trouble. A lot of people die. A lot of things are destroyed. A lot of upheaval. Afterwards, you may get what you want. A lot of bad feelings. You want to avoid it if at all possible. Something else that needs to be pointed out about activism. Democracies don't last long. This is well understood. They don't have long lifespans. Empires and kingdoms, they can go on for a long time. The modern dictatorship, its lifespan is kind of short, but for different reasons. But then we want it to be short. We want dictatorships to be as short as possible. Dictatorships are just too hot, right? They're like kingdoms only, or empires only, just ultra hot, and they just burn up out of their own arrogance or just awfulness. Democracies are not bad. Democracies are extraordinarily valuable ways for people to organize and live their lives, but they don't last long, and there are reasons for that. And the principal reason that democracies fail is because democracies require trust and participation, and that kingdoms and empires and dictatorships do not. They're much simpler. Ultra rule by maybe a single individual with ultimate power, and if anybody has a problem with that and wants to express it, they're happy to kill you. And therefore, their problem is gone. Democracies, we can't do that. And in order to function, you need the trust of the citizens. And if you lose that trust, democracies fail. It's that simple. It always comes down to that, one way or another. The United States right now is in decline. The United States democracy is in decline. So are the Oakland Athletics. I mean, the baseball team. Can it bounce back? Absolutely. As soon as Oakland gets to Vegas, which is now one of the greatest sports town in history. They'll probably win the World Series the next year. So we can come back, but we're in decline right now. And the principal reason that we're in decline, and you can point to lots of different things, is trust in government has eroded to the point of almost failure. And trust in government is kind of like, I don't know, it's like the immune system. When it declines, like the immune system, then you become vulnerable, like a human being, to all kinds of diseases. Now, the concept body politic is a phrase used to refer to a nation's political engagement and the citizens' involvement with it as a corpus. And so decline in trust is like the decline in immune system of a body. Suddenly the body politic becomes vulnerable to all manner of diseases and tumors and skin rashes and all kinds of stuff. And if you get enough of those things, you die. So that's what's going on now. The body politic of the United States is sick. It has a number of afflictions that need attention. And they get the attention. It's possible and likely that it will feel better and the nation will do better and will move forward. And what is one of the chief ways that a sick body politic can be healed? By activism. And it's not an easy path. The role of the activist is fundamentally to address an injustice, as I mentioned, with vigor. And the reason that you need them is that the citizens of a nation, any nation, particularly a democracy, are busy. They have to take care of themselves. They have to take care of a family, which means they have to have a job and a career, and they have to deal with the ever-growing complexities of modern civilization. And it's getting more expensive every day. And so the vast majority, all people, simply cannot put that down and say, we're going to get justice. They just can't do it. And so you have certain individuals that take up that mantle for whatever reason. Somewhat because they're crazy, which is why I have that particular little guy above my head there, just to remind me frequently that, you know, what I'm doing, I got to be crazy. But they do this, and very often they succeed. And that's where the rights and privileges come. They don't have to go through all the activist moves of the 20th century, but they pretty much all follow the same path. They have the same process. And as we know, most of them, the major ones, succeeded. Let me be clear. What is going on right now, which I like to call the capital D disclosure process, is an activist movement. And it has been from day one. From the very first person back in this late 1940s, very likely somebody that was at Roswell, that I don't know, went up to a mayor or maybe a journalist or a friend or whatever and just said, you know, what happened there? I was there and it was wrong. I had some military guy screaming at me, you know, if you say anything about what you saw, we're going to bury you in the desert and you'll never be seen again. And that's not justice. Now, they may not have done anything about it. In fact, they didn't. But that's a little bit of activism. It started very slow. And the early days, interestingly enough, when it started to pick up a little speed, it was being championed by former members of the military, which is notable. But the movement started back then. And it is a movement like no other. I am not aware of any activist movement of any substance coming. If you get down to really small little things that happen, sure. But I mean, I'm talking about major activist movements that helped shape the modern world. All right. I'm not aware of a single one, right, that did not operate quite like this one. or that did operate quite like this one. Let me get it right. In other words, this activist movement, I think, is unique and very much more difficult because of this rather extraordinary distinction. And I want you to, as I talk about this, think back to the 20th century, all the big movements, you know the ones I'm talking about, they all seem to happen in that one decade in the 60s, but there was actually things happening the entire century. Major movements that helped change the lives of virtually the entire population, one degree or another. Every single one of them had something in common. The issue that they were addressing, the injustice that they were addressing, was completely accepted as being real. Women's rights, the rights of people of color, gay rights, the environmental issues, anti-war issues. All of the issues were real, but not in this movement. This movement had a rather significant barrier in that the entire time this movement has been underway, including pretty much to this day, though frankly, I think maybe it doesn't quite hold now, but up until very recently, the focus of the activist movement, according to the authorities of the United States government, did not exist. In other words, you're trying to achieve justice about something that doesn't exist. It's not real. Therefore, you're nuts. They weren't calling civil rights activists and women's rights activists nuts, right? Because there are no women and there's no segregation. They said they were irritating and they don't like them and what have you, but they didn't call them crazy. But the people in this activist movement were called crazy because there are no ETs. So why on earth are you all upset about this? I think it's the only activist movement to face that, and it's amazing, right? And it could have only happened in the modern era in a democracy like the United States. What do I mean? Well, in general, in the old days, in the days of kingdoms and monarchies and empires and all that stuff, and certainly all the dictatorships of the 20th century, I mean, you could be an activist for a couple of minutes. You could get up there and say, you know, and they just killed you. They just killed you. Yeah, they buried you somewhere in the woods or whatever. Well, in a democracy, you can't do that. It's one of the reasons democracies are hard and tend to be hard to maintain because you just can't kill everybody that disagrees with you. You actually have to deal with them, right? And so, as we're coming up in this to this issue, starting in 1947, the government was facing a rather extraordinary situation. We have the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We have a Bill of Rights. We have a Constitution. We enjoy. We have a lot of options for justice and redress. And all of a sudden, there's this major issue with national security implications, and people are wanting to know about it, and the government doesn't want to tell them. And so, what the government decided to do is, we can't kill them. We'll just deny there's nothing to activate against. There's nothing there. There's no there. And we'll use all of our skills, everything we learned during World War II, and in general, the 20th century about propaganda and manipulating people with words and all of that, plus our surveillance abilities and all the tech we have, and put it all together and also our ability, using the goodwill that we had from World War II to influence media, influence universities and professors, whatever, to just kind of keep them not under control so much, just keep them on board, all right? And we'll just deny the whole thing. There's nothing there. And it worked. 76 years after Roswell, though over the last 24 months, one can say it's just about over. But technically, the position of the United States government is there is no there. But as we know, recently they said, wait a minute. This stuff is not ours, and we don't think it's our adversaries. So that doesn't leave a lot of options. And then, of course, David Grush came forward kind of prematurely with credentials and the proper position and stated, yeah, we've got vehicles and dead bodies. So, we're practically there. But the president hasn't said it. And until the president says it formally, officially, the list of things that can happen, the list of things we can't know, the places we can't go, is still a very, very long list. And that's not disclosure until you get that announcement, which is what capital D disclosure means. And so 76 years on, technically, the position of the White House is, well, we not yet believe there's anything here. Now imagine being an activist in that arena. Boy, tough, really tough. Not so much dangerous, but frustrating. Oh my God. What could be more frustrating than that? It's like, yeah, there's nothing there. What are you talking about? Okay. So that is the nature of the activism that I'm involved in. As an activist, Richard is involved in as a researcher and historian. I've got many friends who are involved in it as journalists, podcasters, which, by the way, is kind of important, right? Because in a sense, one of the reasons that this extraordinary 76-year success of the United States government and maintaining that there's no there is ending is because the rise of citizen journalism and citizen communication at a level virtually unprecedented and could not have even been dreamed of in 1947. The rise of the internet, the ability to communicate worldwide, the rise of podcasting, social media, which has its downside, no question. But the ability of millions of people to gather behind an idea has never been more powerful. And not gather behind an idea in general, but quickly. We live in an age where a 17-year-old with some clever ideas and a good camera can go from 0 to 10 million followers in 6 months. 10 million followers. There are videos, particularly music videos, particularly K-pop, K-top, whatever you call it, videos that have exceeded 2 billion views on YouTube. 2 billion. 1.5 billion people watched the World Soccer Cup finals last year. Live. 1.5 billion people. So it's clear that the technology is there for unlimited numbers of people to get behind anything at any time. And if you're running the truth embargo, which involves an issue which is worldwide, they're flying everywhere. They're all over the place. They're in, they're out, they're here, they're there, they're being picked up on radar, sonar, cameras, videos. They're hanging out in bedrooms. If you really think that in the age of modern communication tech like that you're going to continue to get away with the truth embargo, then you're the one that's crazy, not the activist. Which brings me to a fairly important point, which not everybody has gotten yet. The truth embargo is over. Essentially, technically over, not formally over. It won't be formally over until our president makes it over, but it's over. And they know it. They've been arriving at that conclusion for some time. The United States government and its intelligence services are really good at keeping track of things. That's their job. And they keep track of everything, including the interest of the American people in this subject, the activists, the research, the podcasts, the websites. They understand it. They follow it. They're paying attention. And the reason they're paying attention is that the U.S. government fully knows well of the extraterrestrial presence and knows a great deal about it. And so they're definitely paying attention to what we do. And they concluded, I'm sure, in greater numbers with every passing year, that just based on the technology alone, they cannot continue. This will not work. You cannot continue to walk out in front of the people and come up with another mogul balloon explanation for this or that. All right. You cannot continue to hide behind SETI, meaning what? We're looking for signals. I mean, what's your problem? You know, hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent looking for signals. We're serious. We really want to know. Nonsense. Okay. I'm not saying the SETI's awful. There's some great radio telescopes that have been built, and they will have purpose. But SETI has never been about ending the truth embargo or finding about the ET presence. The people that started SETI probably knew there was an ET presence. So they can't hide behind that anymore. And then you've got NASA. NASA's been bumping up against things that clearly confirm an extraterrestrial presence for years, decades. And NASA's a damn good organization. It's done some amazing things, but they can't go there. They could have a photo of an entire city on the other side of the moon. You know what they do? They take that photo and give it to the Department of Defense. And the Department of Defense would say, this photo never happened. You didn't give it to us, and we weren't here. And don't you ever bring it up. And that would be fully legal under the 1958 Space Act. And so NASA has had to be in check all these years. That's not going to last much longer. So, what's the point? The truth embargo is ending. Okay. Now, that brings up how quickly, how confident are you, what justifies that, and so forth. And that's what I'm going to now get into. 2, 3, 4 hours, tops. Nothing more than that. It's all right. Order them in, Grubhub, whatever you need. So, the most important point that I'll make, and I've made it on several hundred podcasts already, but I think I've got better camera this time, so this is going to be more powerful, is this. And it is a struggle for a lot of people to get this, and I understand that. That's why I'm just going to keep saying it and saying it until I just beat you into submission. What is going on, and has been going on for roughly, really, since the late 2017s. We're talking 6 years, but I think most significantly the last 3 years, is the United States government, God bless it, is setting up the infrastructure, which is a very complicated thing to do because this is a big issue. This is not trivial. They're setting up the infrastructure and the processes and doing all the, all the bells and whistles in place so that disclosure could take place. This is about getting to disclosure. But that's only half the reason. The other reason, and it's very important, is this. Once disclosure does take place, I have suggested countless times it will be on a Friday night around 9:30. They tend to do this, particularly on something like this. Probably from the East Room, could be from the Oval Office. I would go with the East Room. I think it's more democratic. You can have the press there. The Oval Office just makes it too much about the president, And there's a lot of statements that have come from the Oval Office, which are not pleasant. The East Room has got some good vibes. I've been there a couple of times. It's nice, beautiful room. 9:30. The press will be gathered. They'll have an anticipation, an expectation that something big is happening. They might even been tipped off. They're keeping their mouth shut. The president will come out and basically say, I've been watching these congressional hearings in the Senate Intelligence Committee put on by Mark Warner and Marco Rubio for a week now. And it's pretty obvious to me. Yeah, non-human tech, non-humans in our world doing their thing. And boy, I know you want to know a lot about that. And I'm going to get information to you very quickly. And as it happens, now the president may or may not say this, all the infrastructure and the legislation and legal falderall and participation of the appropriate entities like Congress, like NASA, is all in place. It's all there. The methodologies for which you can bring information out of the deepest, darkest, unacknowledged, unspecified, unaccounted for special access program, it's all there. Going to move it from here to here, get reviewed, then to here, get reviewed again, and eventually it all ends up in the National Archives. All of it. Well, at least the documents. I'm sure the extraterrestrial spacecraft will end up in the Smithsonian Museum, the one out by Dulles Airport or whatever. It's all in place. It's all there. Protection for witnesses. right? For process, eminent domain, if it gets passed on December 21 in the new NDAA bill, eminent domain clause put in by not only Schumer, right? Chuck Schumer himself, one of the Gang of Eight, Senate Majority Leader. That was no trivial thing that he did. Eminent domain. The government of the United States owns all that stuff. People say, well, wait a minute. What about capitalism? What about capitalism? We are a capitalist country. We have a right to make money from stuff. I've got some ET stuff here, and I think I can make a lot of money from it. And I'm a capitalist. Chuck said, fine. Open some chicken franchises. You're not making money off of that tech. First, the United States government will have it, and then we'll decide what to do with it. Fine. And I'm sure there's some tech in the hands of other governments, and they're going to claim eminent domain. I can assure you. Now, is good thing, bad thing? We'll see, because there's much to come in terms of sorting all this out. But we're not sorting anything out until we get disclosure. And so, again, the second reason we've been going through this for 3 years is so that it would be in place. It had to be in place. Imagine this circumstance. Something weird happens. I don't know what it is. It could be that we got word through our intelligence systems that Xi Jinping, who has great plans for China, pretty much ruling the planet, at least pretty much, being the Amazon for the planet, and buy anything unless you go through Alibaba or whatever. The point is that Xi Jinping is planning to spill the beans. Going to come out, disclose, boom, it's going to happen in 2 weeks. And I'm, oh my God, I can't have this. And so, well, get the president out there. Go to the president, brief him, tell him, here's what we got to do. President's got to do it. The president says, oh my God, we got to do it. So the president walks out in the East Room and discloses the extraterrestrial presence to the world, to the United States citizens, and none of the stuff that has been put together in the last 3 years exists. Nothing. No legislation, no arrow, no NASA study, nothing. And the next day, well, every journalist in the country and virtually all the people in America and around the world are in front of every microphone they can get to, in every briefing room they can find, on every Twitter feed, every social media aspect, every bulletin board, demanding immediate information now, right now. Total chaos. It would be nuts and destructive and stupid. You just don't want that to happen, and it could happen. You've got to get the infrastructure together. You've got to build the scaffolding on which the president can stand in order to do something pretty big, even bigger than putting a hand on the Bible and taking an oath to be president, confirming the extraterrestrial presence. When that day comes, and I believe it's soon, all of that is in place, and the post-disclosure world will proceed in a rational and productive way, with minimum disruption, and the people will be grateful for that. And it's important to the government that the people be grateful for that, because there is kind of a third reason why all this is happening. And it has to do with the fact that we are not a dictatorship. We are a democracy. And we want our leaders to be accountable. And we can attack them. We can criticize them. We can do really awful cartoons about them and live. That's the way our country runs. And so if you're a public official and you really screw up, let me tell you, it's a rough road you're going to be on. Not so in other countries, right? You just basically say, say one more thing and you're going to fall out of a window on the 10th floor of a building in some city, Eastern Europe. It's a problem. And the U.S. has got a big problem. Why? Because they're ending a 75-year-old truth embargo. Not just 75-year-old, quote, lie. An embargo on the truth. Not only that, it's not like we had a secret and now we're telling you. For the whole time, we were telling you over and over again, there was nothing there at all. And it wasn't just, we just didn't tell you, and now you found out. Oh, no, we've known, you've known, and you've known that we've known, and you've known that we've known that you've known that we've known. And now they have to come forward and say, yeah, it's all true. Oh, this is awkward. All of you have experienced awkward moments like this in your life, I'm sure. Nothing quite at this level, but still. Now, let me go into more detail as to how awkward it is. The downside of this much ramp up, this much preparation, is that the post-disclosure world will develop rapidly. If they had done it back in 48, when Truman had a good shot, it wouldn't have been quite like this, not by a long shot. Even 53, after the big events in July 52 over Washington, it would have been a lot easier. Now, not so easy. It's going to get hot really fast. And so the day after disclosure, in the briefing room over at the Department of Defense, in the briefing room at the White House, in the congressional briefing room, and any other briefing room that people can find, even maybe the governor offices, I don't know. The questions are going to come fast and furious, and there's not going to be any restraint, meaning, well, this question is a little bit too tough for the government right now. I think I'll wait a couple of weeks on this. No. Boom. What are some of the questions that are going to be asked on day one of whoever has been given the task in the White House briefing room, whoever is the White House press secretary is going to have to answer? Could be a woman, could be a man. I know the woman there is very nice. I like her very much. It's Pierre. Miss Pierre, question. When did the government know about the extraterrestrial presence based upon some things we heard from David Grush and some other stuff? Just curious. When did they know? The answer should better damn well be the truth. Post-disclosure lying, not a good idea. The answer is 1947, possibly 43. 1947. Whoa, really? 47. Next question. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Answer, national security. Okay. I get that. All right. Next question. Do we have, as David Grush and others have stated, multiple non-human vehicles of high technology? Answer, yeah. Do we have the bodies? Yeah. Okay, no problem. That's already out there. Next question. When did we get those? I mean, how long have we had those? 1947, we got something in 52, and then something in 64, whatever, we've had them for a while. Next question. Why didn't you tell us about that sooner? National security. Oh, okay. Next question. Any of this technology that we have you learned anything from it during these many decades through just scientific inquiry or re-engineering or what have you, that could be very beneficial to us citizens out here in the cruel world, not just in the United States, but around the world? We have our problems, It's getting rather dicey. Any of that tech, could that have been helpful? The answer is probably almost certainly yes. Well, then why didn't you get it out there? We could have used it. Answer, in order to do that, we would have had to have ended the truth embargo, and the truth embargo needed to be maintained for national security. Okay, we get it. But things are getting a little hot. Things are getting a little dicey now in the briefing room. People are starting to scratch their ears and going, oh, man, are you kidding me? And the people at home are watching this. It's all going to be filmed, I assure you. Some of them are starting to get pretty hot under the collar. And then it gets worse. Next question. We've heard a great deal about people having direct contact with extraterrestrials, being taken for visits, the odd ride or two, physical exams, and things like that. Is that true? Answer, yes. It better not be no. Again, this will be the new age of truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And any idiot that goes in front of a microphone after disclosure and puts out a bold-faced lie about this issue, the social media is going to grind them to dust and sweep them out the back door of the briefing room, never to be heard from again. Because the number of eyeballs that are going to be focused on these hearings through that wonderful media, remember 1.5 billion people watch the World Cup final, are in the billions. And so lies just aren't going to work. Next question. Why didn't you do something about it? Answer. There was nothing we could do about it. The ETs can do anything they want. And we cannot stop them. Whoa. You see what I mean about awkward? You see what I mean about why doing the right thing and setting up infrastructure and going through all these so we're ready for disclosure is going to soften the ire of the American people when the really tough questions will be asked, and they will be asked. Now, let's hypothetically take it up another notch. I mean, if in the discomfort zone, okay, let's go up another notch. Now, this is hypothetical, but imagine this question. I'm not saying this is true. I think it's more likely not true, but it could be true. Here's your another question to the press secretary or the spokesperson for the Department of Defense. There have been rumors that the United States government may have made a deal with at least one of the extraterrestrial species that in return from some really cool tech you can't get on Amazon.com, we sort of gave them a carte blanche to pretty much take who they needed to do what they got to do, plus the odd cow and what have you. And imagine that the answer to that is yes. Are you starting to see the public relations dilemma that the government's going to face, regardless of whether it does the preparation on this as it is doing now, or just comes right out and says it? It's massive, and I'm just getting warmed up. So let's now take a step back a little bit and get back to the fundamental premise. The message that I've been getting out now in hundreds of podcasts, but is not turning up on Fox. It's not turning up on MSNBC, ABC, NBC. It's not in the Washington Post. It's not in the New York Times. It's nowhere. I'd like to get on those places and talk about this, but I don't know. I am, as that little white guy up back there says, maybe crazy. All right. All of what is being done is to create the infrastructure and the process that allows the President of the United States in a minimally political way and in a way that makes sense and is transparent, since these hearings, there's already been one. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it happened. It was watched by a lot of people. The Senate Intel committees are going to be watched by, pick a number, 100 million, 500 million, 800 million, big number. This process that will then deliver to the president the means by which the president can say, look, like you, the evidence is compelling. I've talked to certain key people. I've made some queries. And this is clearly the case, that we are not alone and we've been visited. And you want to know a lot about this, and I'm going to do my best to see you get that information. And by the way, we happen to have some very nice processes set up that will allow that information to move forward. And then the information process will begin, along with endless hearings. More hearings will go on for months and months and months and months. Every committee is going to want to hear it, right? The Committee for Public Works or Canals or whatever the hell is going to have a hearing on this one way or another. I mean, it's the biggest issue in the history of the human race. And people in politics like to get in front of cameras. This will be a great opportunity. So it's about preparing for disclosure itself. It is not about finding out what this phenomena is. And for those that are in that place, it's driving them crazy. Because if you really think that this is about trying to find out what the phenomena is, there's always a statement or something happening that will drive you up the wall. It was like, wait a minute. You're trying to find out what the phenomena. Why did you do that? Why did you say that? Why haven't you done this? Why didn't you fund Arrow? And so forth and so forth and so forth. There's all kinds of things that are happening which are incongruous, which are creating cognitive dissonance. I understand. But let me say something else about activism. There's a couple of things that activists have to do in order to succeed. If you don't do these things, generally, you don't succeed. One of them is what I call perspective. It's about vantage point. And what I mean by that, the nature of the world is incredibly complex, and people are busy taking care of themselves and surviving. And so the vast majority of all people live in a relatively defined space that they can control and understand and do their business and take care of themselves and their families. And they do not have time to climb to the tops of mountains and look down for the bigger perspective, except, of course, Google Earth now allows you to do that. And so people do that. I do, right? You may be just living in a little place by yourself with no windows or whatever, but at any time you can go on Google Earth and you can find any country. You can go down and you look at the streets and what have you. It's the big picture. Well, that's cool. And it's amazing that we can do that. And it's another example of why the world can no longer tolerate these kinds of ridiculous lies and misrepresentations from government. I mean, I can look at the whole planet. There's a few places that are pixelated out, but overall, I can pretty much look at any place on the planet. Fantastic. That's called perspective. Well, Google Earth could only go so far. If you're talking about perspective on a major thing that is happening in the world that could affect your life, people just don't have the opportunity or the time to get to a vantage point. That's where the activist comes in. The activist tries to find a vantage point, like, getting up on a big, tall ladder or getting off to a good angle where you can kind of see what's going on, whatever, get a vantage point where they can get a perspective on what is happening and then convey that to the general public so the public can make a decision about it, to decide to what extent they want to exceed, suppress, push back, whatever, to what extent it's valuable. That's what an activist does. It's one of the things they do. Vantage point. And the other thing an activist does is language. Basically, all injustice is accompanied by the language of injustice. I don't care what the issue is. The authority, the state, always generates language which supports this injustice. So, in fact, they're so good at it that in order to talk about the injustice, you have to use the state's language, which right away gets you into hot water. Right? So what the activists do? They create a different language. They change the language. They come up with terms and phrases and words that more properly reflect the truth of the matter and not simply the government's position and or status. And this was true of the ET issue. It's true of every activist movement in history. And there are examples of this. UFO was a real problem. UAP was very helpful. It was so successful in terms of moving things forward that UFO is now back and totally cool. Well, that's great. That doesn't always work that way. All right. UFO cover-up, not helpful and not accurate. Truth embargo, more appropriate, and so forth. Abductees, as the only term to refer to experiencers, not helpful. Contactees, as a larger subject or as an umbrella term, better. So you've got contactees that come in different types. You've got psychic contact, you've got abduction, you have experiencers, right, which usually refers to people that are having a more pleasant engagement and so forth. Language, accurate. You have to make the language accurate and it has to reflect the need of the activist movement. So activists do that. But let's get back to perspective and vantage point. I have a perspective on this and a vantage point because it's all I do is find a vantage point and look at stuff, right? There are people and colleagues of mine that are literally granular in it, literally in the middle of it, right? Or they're researchers focused on a particular part of it and they go deep and deep into that. Right? And their citizens are trying to follow it here, there, and everywhere. There was literally a fire hose now. And they're all trying to decide what's going on. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Where's it gone? What's happening? And it's really confusing. And it doesn't make a lot of sense in a lot of cases because, again, of the unusual nature of this issue and the way it's playing out. I mean, this is three-dimensional chess. The civil rights movement was regular chess. This is three-dimensional chess. No disrespect to the civil rights movement. Believe me, one of the greatest movements of all time, certainly in the United States. I happen to think this is the most profound movement in history, but for various reasons, not again demean in any other movement, but this one is really big and global, massive, and the implications are beyond measure, right? So I follow the media. People say, well, you can't follow the media. The media are all liars. Now, I pay attention to what the government's doing. And people say, well, you can't pay attention to what the government's doing. The government is nothing but demons. They're run by people that live in castles or some European guy with a funny name, right? No, that's not true. In fact, one of the problems that the activism has faced in this issue is concomitant with the decline of democracy and the massive distrust that has developed. When you lie to people and when the body politic becomes infected, everything gets damaged. And so lies breed more lies and contempt and suspicion breeds conspiracy until the view of reality becomes so warped that it's like a warped piece of wood. You can't use it. You can't build anything with it. Whole damn thing's completely warped. It's twisted. You can't do anything. Everybody in the CDC are demons and evil. Everybody in the government are bought and sold and awful, and the journalists are all liars, and on and on and on. If that were true, we would be completely screwed. It'd be over. I'd be looking for a nice, comfortable spot to put a tent up in New Zealand. Just lead out a quiet life, eating some fine New Zealand food. But that's not the case. This is not true. We got lots of great journalists. The government is filled with lots of people that have our best interests at heart and are trying to do the right thing. Even some of the ones we don't think are doing the right thing are actually doing the right thing. Oh yeah, we've got some journalists that aren't doing their job. And we've got some people in government that are really dangerous, have a tendency to use wars like the first option. We got to watch out for them. There's always that. But when you demonize the whole shebang, you've got nowhere to go. You might as well just cash out. I mean, that's it. So what do you gain? Nothing. All you gain is the satisfaction of knowing everybody is awful. And somehow that makes you feel, I don't know, more comfortable. I don't know, but it doesn't accomplish anything, and you can't be an activist. You can't change anything. In fact, we have a ton of people on our side on this issue, and they're growing every single day. All right. So, perspective. The journalism on this subject is extraordinary. On my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, I have a media archive that I've been working steadily on since 2006. I probably put in 5,000 hours. Why? Well, for one thing, it just gave me an excuse to read the articles. Otherwise, why would I? And so now it's up to 15,000. Now, 15,000 is maybe a fraction of the total number of journalistic articles written about this subject since 1947 in the English language only, just that. English language press, which would include the UK and India, which has a lot of English language press and so forth, Australia, what have you, Canada. How many have been written on this subject? Real articles in real media? 50,000, 60,000? I got 15,000 linked on my site. And they're triaged, they're triaged from a lot larger group of articles because there are a lot of media that just aren't substantive enough. It's not that they're ridiculous or invalid, they're just not that substantive. I'm trying to stay with pretty much professional journalism, which still covers a fairly substantial spectrum. 15,000 articles. And guess what? If you were to read them all, you would get a pretty good record of this issue as it's moved forward in time from 1997 on. Now, I don't have a lot of articles linked prior to 2004-3 because they're not available through the net. And by the way, every time I find an article, I copy it. So I've got almost all 15,000 copied on my hard drive, so I can substitute them out if the link dies. So the point is that in order to get into the articles from the earlier days, you've got to go to the archives of newspapers and go through microfiche. Well, give me $5 million, I'll hire 55 assistants, and we'll go do that, and we'll have 50,000 articles on the site. But that can't happen. We don't need it to happen. But 50,000 articles, you read them all, and you literally see the issue through time, and you could see it developing, and you could see learn a lot about it. So you say, okay, well then, so journalists have done their job. Not exactly. Because you see, what's been missing through this entire period in the journalistic world, which I do hold journalism responsible for, and they will answer it. They will have their own questions to answer. And the scientists, universities, a lot of awkward questions are going to be asked of a lot of entities, not just the United States government, I can assure you. And I'm sure they're already preparing their answers. You know, I know nothing. So you see the articles covering the issue, but what you do not see is investigation. You see, the real journalism, as we know, is investigative journalism. That's where you get the Pulitzer Prizes. Not just covering what happened, you know, this happened and that happened. No, you got to get in there and dig. There have been some wonderful examples of investigative journalism in America, many of which have won Pulitzer Prizes. We know about that. And they're important. Newspapers, maybe less so than in the past, though the current owner of the Washington Post apparently has a few bucks, have the resources to get skilled reporters out there digging through trash cans, finding sources, sneaking in the windows, whatever the hell they got to do, and coming up with the truth that simply cannot be gotten any other way. They can bring down presidents, they can bring down corporations, they can change the world, and they do it all the time, but not on this issue. They do not investigate this issue. Now, recently, there have been some publications that have come forward that are doing that. But again, this is very recent, and they're new. I love them. The Drive in the War Zone, fantastic guys. And then you've got the Debrief, fantastic. And they're kind of focused on this subject. At least the Drive focuses on it. The War Zone covers a lot more. The Debrief is very much focused on it, and they're doing investigative work, yes. But of course, that's just recent. New York Times, Washington Post, nada, nothing. So the failure there is simple. If the major papers had decided to go investigative journalist on this, we'd have had a truth embargo ended a long time ago. It's not that difficult, right? to figure it out, all right? And then and start asking really tough questions and developing some inside sources and breaking some stories. They could have ended the truth embargo long ago, and they didn't. And I think I know why. They were convinced long ago on the national security basis for the truth embargo, and they accepted. I'm not saying they were threatened. I'm not saying that they were offered anything or bribed or anything else. I believe the truth embargo starts in 1947 and 52. And that was a time when cooperating with the most powerful nation in the world, the only nation with atom bombs, the only nation that could defend democracies against the rise of the Soviet Union and its nuclear threat that had just defeated the Axis powers, was not a particularly difficult decision to make. Yeah, of course, national security. And so they did. And there weren't a lot of papers. I mean, there were plenty of papers, but overall, the news media matrix was much smaller. And year after year after year, they went along with this. And finally, it was institutionalized, meaning, okay, we've been pretty much going along with this now for a couple of decades and being very cooperative and not pushing it and not challenging the truth embargo. It became very difficult for them to say, well, time's up. We're sending out Bob Woodward and Mr. Bernstein, and they're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to tell the people the truth about the ET presence. Now it was like, you know, we're in, and we're pretty much into the long haul now. And we're going to pretty much play it out this way until the president finally confirms the ET presence. And then they will go investigations. Oh, yes, trust me. There will be lots of investigative journalism post-disclosure. And so the journalist didn't investigate, but they covered it. They covered it. I follow that, and I follow what's going on. And that's why I've gotten to the vantage point that I referred to before, where I am trying to convey to you something that others are not conveying because they're not at that same vantage point. This is not about finding out what the ET thing is. It's not even remotely about that. And there's lots of clues, right, that you can find that point to it. I don't think they're intentional, but they know they're there. They're not going out of their way to do that, but they're hoping that this thing will just move forward and get done, right? Because it's awkward as hell. Because they fully know that there are plenty of people out there that are not activists. They're not talking on podcasts like this, but they're sitting there in their chair knowing, you guys know all about this. I mean, really, come on, give me a break. They know that. They know they're irritating people. They know it's awkward, but they also know they have to do it. And I give them credit for that. And to be fair to the government, look, from the moment that the 10 people came forward as part of this organization called the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, the organization was not important. It was the 10 people in their resumes that were important, 3 of which included Elizondo, Christopher Mellon, and Gary Nolan, and somebody else that's fallen back into the background. They didn't choose not to go forward beyond that, Steve Justice from Lockheed Martin. These 4 alone was a milestone. And so from that point forward, right, we have been in this process leading to disclosure, but I do not think that any of them, when they did come forward in public on October the 11th of 2017, thought it was going to take 6 years. It didn't have to take 6 years. Could have been done in 3, easy. But history is tough. History does whatever the hell it wants. It's like the sun. The sun does what it wants. If it wants to create a coronal mass ejection and send you 800 billion tons of hypermatter, it'll do it, right? And so that you just got to go with it. Got to go with the flow, like hurricanes. And so what we had was lots of hurricanes. From October of 2017 on, things got crazier and crazier and crazier. Then they got deadly, right? And then they got even more deadly. Unprecedented political chaos. The most dangerous war in terms of nuclear threat ever in the Ukraine. Enormous economic impact from the pandemic, but mostly just unprecedented political chaos. Because you see, disclosure is a political issue, and the disclosure process is a political process. It actually has to happen within the political context. And basically, the political context for the last 6 years is a Category 6 hurricane. It's like trying to play canasta outdoors with 200-mile-an-hour winds. Not easy. That's delayed everything, dragged it out, and made it much more uncomfortable. This is something you want to get done. You want to pull this Band-Aid off as quickly as possible. Not really, really slow. But they had no choice. It's now stretched out 6 years and making it harder on them in a lot of ways. I respect that. But something that many people are not taking note of, and that is, in spite of unbelievable political stuff, which I have never seen in my lifetime before, actions by this party and this president and that president, unbelievable stuff. And out of nowhere, what the hell war in the Ukraine, and the worst pandemic since 1917, this process has continued to move inexorably forward, just slower, right? And the other point that should be made now in terms of vantage point is this. I think a lot of people know this, but let me point it out. At any given time, the significant majority of everything that's happening is not happening in the public space. It's happening behind the scenes. Shocking? No, not at all. Every year, 2 years, I forget what it is, they passed the spending bill, right? It's a massive bill. It depends on the government. And people learn about it when comes up for a vote, or if there's a debate about whether they're going to pass it at all, and they pass the vote, it's done, and they go, and people just go, that's how we fund the country. Behind that bill is massive amounts of work and time and negotiations, untold thousands of hours. That's the way government works. It's like an iceberg. 80% is behind the scenes, happening out of the public sight, and 10, 20% is in the public domain. There's nothing wrong with that. That's it has to be that way. And so the majority of everything happening on the disclosure process is not public. Briefings on the Hill, meetings on the Hill, classified reports that are given to certain committee chairs, and discussions between the White House, possibly the DOD, and the DOD and the Intel Committee, and interviews of witnesses, and on and on and on. It's all not public. That doesn't mean it isn't going on. And then we get a taste of it. We get something that is brought forward. And if we treat that as, well, this is all that's happening, this is not enough, forgetting that, hey, most of it is happening out of sight. Now, eventually, we want to know all those things that happened out of sight. Historians want to know, and frankly, I think the public wants to know. And in the post-disclosure world, if the government is wise, could happen, they will start very quickly revealing the processes that led to that moment. Who met with who and how and what was in classified reports and everything else. And that's a good idea. It will service their public relations problem. As those really tough questions start coming forward, any kind of transparency, retroactive even, will modify the public's, well, irritation. Though again, most of us already know it. So the fact that they're going to finally admit it, I mean, it's hard. How irritated can I get, right? I'll be fine. But there are a lot of people that will be a little irritated and upset by this, and I appreciate that. And they deserve to be upset. And one of the messages that I will be giving post-disclosure, as I try to find every microphone within 1,000 miles to get in front of, is this. Look, folks, be generous in victory, be graceful, try to keep your I told you so's to just one a day. That's all. Preferably in the family, but whatever. And this is the most important point, don't ever let this happen again. Don't ever allow the United States government, or any government, if you happen to be of another country, let's spread the word, though some countries, I would say, hold off. Don't get ahead of your skis here. Give them a little time to mature. But in the United States, don't ever let it happen again that the United States government makes the decision to withhold absolute fundamental truths about the nature of the world from its people, because they have this delusion that, one, they don't need to know, don't have a right to know, and can't handle the truth. All of which is false, and was false from day one. July of 1947, that was false. The American people had a right to know, needed to know, and could have damn well handled the truth. It was false the next year and the year after that. It has always been untrue. It has simply been a basis to justify a national security policy convenient to the United States government for a number of reasons, not including the fact that we were always on the edge of nuclear war, and that kind of made people just a little nervous about choices. This nuclear war thing has probably mucked up a lot of our thinking and what have you, but it's hard not to do that. It is kind of a big deal. Nuclear war would be incredibly inconvenient. I know it's going to cause inflation. The price of everything is going to go up. So I get it. Don't ever let it happen again. That's the one message I would like to convey on that subject. So, where are we? Let's bring it up to the moment. Now that we're all convinced and know that this is not about finding out what that there's some sort of phenomena that's not ours, but rather setting up the stage for disclosure and allowing the president to do it, where are we at this particular present time? Okay. Let's see. First of all, the amount of activity, entities being set up, projects being created, content in various levels of production is off the charts. I can't keep up with it. It's impossible. I can barely keep up with the news articles. I have right now in my computer, I estimate 250 news articles that qualify to be put up in the print media archive. And I got to go do that. Just me. All my assistants fled years ago. But I happen to know, because I've spent the last 2.5 years in Los Angeles County, wherein resides the small city called Hollywood, which is a name which now kind of stands in for the entire entertainment industry. But believe me, it's much more than Hollywood. That a whole lot is going on because the film industry has figured it out. I mean, put it this way, they've kind of known, they've always known, but they figured out it's game time, right? And they're starting to do things and act, and there's projects in the works, and I happen to be part of that, but in a small way. But there are some major things going on, and I'll get back to that in the film industry, right? Finally, and I will get back to that, believe me. Now, in the other capital of that, and by the way, Los Angeles is the cultural capital of the United States. New York is the financial capital, and Washington is the political capital. New York is not on board yet. Give it time. It's only a matter of time. We're going to have ETs, what do you call them? Hedge funds, ET-based hedge funds, right? Somehow or another, they'll come up with that, whatever. But New York is still kind of sitting off the side. We got some activists up there that are doing their best. Friends of mine, but overall, New York is kind of sitting up there and just concentrating on making money. But Washington, no. Washington is in the thick of this because it is the political capital of the world, and this is a political matter. So where is it here? As of today, the circumstances are this. One, a appropriate and going forward entity called AARO, All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, is fully in place and getting some modest funding. Not much, because it doesn't need any funding, because it's not set up to find anything out. It's set up to service the post-disclosure world, which hasn't come yet. That's okay. But it's in place, right? Has a good name. All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. You know what has that name? Not to be cute. It started off with something called the UAP Task Force, which is, not much. And the acronym is, ugh. And then they had a couple of more names as they move forward in time with different legislation, and they're trying to adjust the name of the entity to fit whatever the legislation is saying, and they were even worse. And they finally landed on All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Very good. Why? One, why is it all domain? Because as this process moved forward and information kept coming out and the public started paying attention and all that, including the journalists, and they realized, the phenomena is not just something flying around in the sky. It's a lot of stuff. They don't just fly around in the sky, they go underwater. And they go in space, right? And there's other things happening, which are not just craft, other stuff that's unusual. And so it's not unidentified aerial phenomena. It's an unidentified anomaly, a number of anomalies, and we need to address them all. Certainly any anomaly that's related in any way, directly or indirectly, to the ET issue, that's definitely in the purview. And so All Domain is trying to cover all of that. Anomaly is covering the domains, the various contexts in which the phenomena can take place. And then anomaly covers a lot of different phenomena. That's good. All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Really? Resolution Office. Would appear that the intention of this is to resolve it. Okay. Resolve what? Okay. Some people will think, well, resolve whether it's non-human or not. No. Resolve the truth embargo regarding all of that all domain anomaly stuff. But just saying resolution is important. That's a That's a active term. We're going to resolve it. Unidentified aerial phenomena is simply a statement of that's something. It doesn't show intent. It just says that's what it is, like calling it an apple. Right? Other names were about investigation. Right? This says resolution, which means you have an outcome that resolves the issue. And we all know what that outcome has to be. So the name is great. And it's a good acronym, AARO. I love it. AARO. Fantastic. They landed just right. Took them 3 years, but they landed it well. We got the organization, we got the office, and it has a director. More about him in a minute. What else do we have? We have 3 full tranches of legislation embedded in 3 consecutive National Defense Authorization Acts, which, by the way, is a fairly important bill. I mean, some people say it's the most important bill. 3 tranches of legislation, substantial, primarily driven by the Senate Intel Committee. There are many Senate committees, but this is the committee with the members that were putting the language on the Senate side of this bill, and in almost every case, the Senate language is what held. A little bit of tweaking from the House, but mostly it's a Senate Intelligence Committee-driven language. The first bill, and he goes down in history for this, championed by Marco Rubio, a Republican and a presidential candidate. The second bill was championed by a Democrat, Kirsten Gillibrand, also a presidential candidate. The third bill was championed by Mark Warner, the chairman of the Senate Intel Committee and one of the most powerful men in Congress, and the most important champion of the fourth bill, which is now waiting reconciliation, was none other than Chuck Schumer, a member of the Gang of Eight and the Senate Majority Leader. There are 535 members of the House and Senate. This legislation was championed by 4 of the most powerful members of the entire Congress. Come on, folks. How much gravitas do you need? That's a lot of gravitas. So we have 3 full tranches of legislation that set up all manner of things. I could go into the granular details. You can go read the acts. They're up on the web, including the pending one, which is very significant. And I'll get to that in a second as well. The pending legislation is major, and it is the final piece of the puzzle. And there's some speculation that it'll be diddled with before it's passed. I do not think so. I believe in this case that bill will pass intact completely. There are issues with legislation right now, but most of them are focused on financing the government, passing the finance bill, the spending bill, not really on this act. One of the reasons this stuff is done so well, even after some 70 years of truth embargo, is because the legislation is embedded in the National Defense Authorization Act, meaning it's damn serious. It's not some side bill. We'll call it the UFO side bill that somebody's trying to get passed in the Senate. It's embedded in the act that authorizes the spending for the defense of the United States of America. That's not an accident. It didn't have to be there, but it is. And so this last legislation, if it passes, literally is the completion of the whole infrastructure package in terms of the processes regarding transfer of information, witness protection, funding of AARO, and a lot of other protocols, rules, and regs. And I have to note, right, with a certain amount of amusement, that this act or amendment within the National Defense Appropriation Act that is going to be reconciled shortly and signed, scheduled to be signed on December 21st, has a name. I mean, you always name amendments, and you name the act. And what name did they choose for this final piece of legislation to complete the infrastructure, setting the president up, or at least moving towards setting the president up to disclose. It's called the UAP Disclosure Act. Could have called it a lot of things. A lot of things. And by the way, it's in caps. The name is all in caps in the bill. I was hoping it would be small and big letters. In other words, UAP, that would be caps, and then capital D, small, I-S-C-L-O-S-U-R, Act, A, small C-T. I would have loved that, but no, it's all caps. But I am willing, if one of those guys up in the hill takes me again or some night and buys me a couple of drinks, I'm willing to ask them, why did you say UAP Disclosure Act? Were you aware that disclosure is kind of a big term out there amongst the citizens and the people that are following the subject matter? I mean, was that just kind of a bone you tossed to us there? Just kind of let us know? I don't know. I liked it, though. It's a hell of a good name. UAP Disclosure Act. What other infrastructure is in place? NASA. What's NASA going to do? Right? It could just sit there and do nothing. And then eventually it all comes out, and the people look to NASA, and then the questions start in their briefing room. And that's going to be tough for NASA, believe me. Question to Bill Nelson. Administrator Nelson. Did anyone at NASA know about the ET presence going back to 58? Answer, yes. Why didn't NASA tell us about it? Can't, against the law. National Security, 1958 Space Act. Has NASA gotten any photographs of stuff that could be extraterrestrial? The answer is probably yes. Has NASA ever airbrushed anything out of a photo because it would create a problem for the truth embargo, and that's not acceptable? The answer is probably yes. That's a lot of uncomfortable questions. So NASA had to be brought on board just to, just sort of soothe that public relations issue. And so NASA set up a committee to investigate. We're setting up a NASA investigative committee of UFOs. Never done that before. God bless them. Was that set up so they could find out what UFOs are? No, it was set up so they could have it and say, hey, well, we set up a committee. We're trying here. Okay, I get it. But that's okay. It's all right. Look, it's a little bit, I don't know. It's clever, maybe too clever by half. But it is not unreasonable to at least show the faith at the end. It's like the American people are going to be more generous with the government over this extraordinary 76 years, if at least at the end, as many of the entities as possible are doing the right thing at the end. Yeah, they could have been doing it 20 years ago, 50 years ago, but at least at the end, they were doing the right thing. And that will make it easier for people to move on. And that's important. Why? Because the post-disclosure world is going to be pretty intense, folks. You think things are intense now? No, they're going to get more intense. But it's good intense. And we have work to do. This is the biggest transition in history, the biggest paradigm shift of all time, probably the most important event in all of human history. It is a milestone. It's very possible that somehow over the next couple of years, in some clever way, the next thing you know, history has been bifurcated. I have to now refer to my good friend Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel, who wrote the book I should have written, but I'm too damn lazy, called After Disclosure, AD After Disclosure, where they actually mention in the book the possibility that history will be bifurcated. It happens a lot as you go back in various civilizations and they bifurcate history because something very big happened. We will start dating the post-disclosure world from the disclosure event. First year after disclosure, day one. Year before, 1 year before disclosure. It's not out of the question. It's that big. We'll see. You see, the other bifurcations tend to be around certain narrow or relatively not global matters, a particular religion, a particular event, and some history of a country. This is global. This is everybody. If you're going to bifurcate history, this is the bifurcation you want. So we have and will have an opportunity in a new paradigm with a whole new set of, well, another additional full set of variables and considerations to start re-examining the world and fixing stuff. It's a lot of work to be done. We simply don't have the luxury to go back and litigate the whole damn truth embargo. Sue here, sue there. Try to get the odd, I don't know, consideration. I mean, there was damage done. There's a basis for people receiving some compensation, and that could happen, but it doesn't have to tie us up. We need to move forward, not backward. And so everything the government's doing right now is making it easier to move forward. And that's important, right? Obviously, in the post-disclosure world, NASA will flourish. And hopefully we'll be able to flourish without any more constraints, such as the national, the 1958 Space Act put on it. It will be NASA exploring space, like in Star Trek, right? Not just exploring stuff that they're allowed to explore and having to airbrush stuff out after they get back, but actually exploring space and getting back to us. The civilian component, our Star Trek, America's Star Trek, the human race's Star Trek, not some billionaire's Star Trek, the people's Star Trek, which is what NASA should be and probably will be. So to go further into the status, all right, right now, there are two things that need to happen before the president could step in front of the press in the East Room and end this embargo. And the first one is I've talked ad infinitum about, and that is ad nauseum about, and that is we need to have the Senate hearing, not a subcommittee hearing, but the Senate Intel Committee hearing. Obviously, right? Are there any witnesses? Lots. Are they like Grush? Bigger. Are they ready to testify? Yeah. Have many of them been interviewed already? Yes. Are most of them military who've taken oaths to serve? Yes. Retired, usually. Already. Ready to go. I know generally what this testimony is, and it will rock the world. It won't rock a lot of my friends and colleagues, and a lot of you. Now you'll be going, I knew that. But there's 8 billion people on this planet. A good deal of them, a significant plurality, if not even a majority, are just barely hanging on. And so they're going to be, it's going to hit them out of nowhere, and it's going to rock their world. All right. And it will be televised. The revolution will be televised. I don't know how many people are going to watch those hearings, but it could be 1 billion, could be 2 billion. Assuming they're properly promoted. Some press releases go out, right? And once those hearings begin, the truth embargo's days are now numbered in less than 10, in my view. About a week is all we need, at which point there'll be hardly a living soul on the planet except certain diehard skeptics who've been sending me emails for 10, 12 years that will be going, I don't know. I mean, all these military guys, I mean, they're probably worried about their pensions. They were set up to do this. I don't know. They're holding their pets ransom. No, it will rock the world. And the president will then be able to come forward, not with a hammer pounding on the Department of Defense's door saying, I want those files, which is what Rockefeller wanted President Clinton to do, which was simply not going to happen. But God, he gave it a shot. It was kind of sad in a way. That's not the way it's done. The president will be able to come forward and simply say, the evidence is clear. You've seen it. I've seen it. My Secretary of Defense has seen it. My director of the CIA has seen it. The Congress has seen it. Yeah. we've got non-humans visiting us, and apparently we have a lot more than that, and you want to know about it, and I'm going to make sure you find out about it, and that is disclosure. That's the two things that have to happen. Okay, and that brings us to timing, and this is where it gets really tricky, because ultimately it comes down to, the act. I mean, it's a very formal thing. The president's going to disclose. It's like getting married. The closer you get to the wedding, everybody is getting really nervous and thinking, I can't do it. I can't do it. I cannot go through this. I'm not sure this person is the right one for me. But all the invitations are out. Right? What are you going to do? It's going to be tough. The timing. Well, there's some clear timing issues here that are non-trivial. And I'm serious about that. Non-trivial, right? What am I talking about? One, just as a little reminder, we could have a nuclear war tomorrow. Yeah, I know. A lot of you have been waiting for that. Yeah, you've been watching hundreds of episodes of The Walking Dead to prepare for the post-apocalyptic world, how to come together, throw vegetables, build the right walls and stuff. I get it. Then you're ready. Because it could happen tomorrow. And every couple of months, something else happens to convince you of that. Yeah, we could have a nuclear war tomorrow. And I'd kind of like to get disclosure out of the way ahead of that, just to see what happens. Okay, because you see, after a nuclear war, the disclosure issue becomes, how would you say, moot. Who cares? Right. And for those who think the ETs will simply save us from all this, stop the weapons, whatever, come down, make us all sing Kumbaya, I think you're overthinking this. And you don't know what the ETs will do or not do, so don't put any bets on that number, please. Let's assume they're just going to sit there and just shake their head or do the double face palm like, Picard on Star Trek. We could have a nuclear war. That's one reason to get it done immediately. That's just the first reason, but there's another reason. Our politics is slowly descending into a sort of bizarre chaos, which frankly is going to make for some damn good comedy movies down the line, some streaming series. It's going to be great stuff. Now that the writers are back to work, I'm sure they're already writing it all up. But it's really a mess. It's awful. And we're about to have another campaign, another presidential campaign. Now, aside from the fact that they cost more every cycle, I don't know what this one's going to cost. We'll ballpark it around $6 billion. In other words, we're going to spend $6 billion to get better government. Amazingly enough, we don't. So we spend, last time, I think, $4 billion. Did we get $4 billion of better? No, we didn't. We just spend a huge amount of money that has to be raised, which is almost impossible, which is why anybody with any common sense is out of their mind to run for office, because you don't really get to govern. You just get to raise a lot of money and owe a lot of people debts and stuff. And it's awful. It's hell. Really, it is. I feel sorry for the politicians. I do. I really do. The system we now have set up for them is hell. The people that actually do it, they're crazier than I am. Anyway, we're going to spend $6 billion. Okay, fine. But it's going to be awful. It's going to be absolutely awful. But now it's gotten really strange. And you want to know why? David Grush, God bless him, a true whistleblower. Almost all the witnesses are not whistleblowers. Let me say that for the umpteenth time. They're just witnesses, please. Grush is a whistleblower, no problem. The rest are not, unless they come out and say, I am a whistleblower, and what the government's doing is absolutely illegal, and I'm blowing the whistle on it. They're not a whistleblower. And there may be one or two others, but the vast majority are just witnesses. You don't want to be a whistleblower. It's a bad gig. Trust me. I've never been a whistleblower, have no intention of becoming one. All right. David Grush came forward. And, well, he had the right position. He worked on the UAP task force. He had the right access. He was told things by people in very, very important positions. He then corroborated that from other people and came forward and told the debrief that we have multiple craft and bodies of non-humans. And he told you News Nation that. Ross Coulthart, who's now working for News Nation. Congratulations, Ross. The guy gets dessert. I don't know. Can you give an Australian a Pulitzer Prize? If you can, give him one. All right. And he basically hung that thing over the election, over the country. I call it a giant matzo ball, but I don't know why I do that. It's a phrase that may not make sense. Multiple crash vehicles of non-human origin and the pilots, dead pilots of those craft, in the possession of the United States for a long time now, decades and decades. It's hanging up there, unresolved, right? The resolution office hasn't gotten to that yet. And now 2,000 or so people are going to run to be the next government of the United States. 435 new, candidate campaigns for Congress, about 33 campaigns for the Senate. I don't know, 20, 30 campaigns for governor. We'll stop there. That's enough. That's about 2,000 candidates. Spending a fortune to convince you that they are the people to run the government because of their ideas, their wisdom, their foresight, their skill. Right? And while they're doing that, hanging above their head is this matter of dead non-humans and their non-human technology in the possession of unacknowledged special access programs. And it's not resolved. If if Warner doesn't have those hearings, the president can't disclose. And if the president can't disclose, all 2,000 of these candidates are running for office, and this thing is hanging over their head. So what are they going to do? So you're at a campaign rally and somebody says, excuse me, sir, I know you want to be a member of the House of Representatives. What are your thoughts about the non-human craft that supposedly is, it hasn't been confirmed yet, and I don't know who this David Grush is. I can't even pronounce his name. Is it Grush? Grush? How do you spell it? I don't know. But, we'll find out eventually. Elect me to office. I'm your man. I'm your woman. Or they actually try to answer the question, not knowing what the hell they're talking about. They look like idiots. Everybody is going to look like idiots, including the presidential candidates, unless they want to get aggressive and really take a strong position on this and say, look, I know what's going on. I didn't just come out of nowhere. I've been around for a while. I worked at the UN. I worked here. I've already been a member of Congress before, blah, 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 and I know what's going on. And yeah, they might do that, but overall, it's going to be a damn mess. On the other hand, if Warner does allow these hearings to take place in January, which is the appropriate time since the bill needs to be passed first, the final bill, the final piece of the puzzle, then we get disclosure in January. The primaries haven't started yet. And so now every one of these 2,000 candidates can go get Richard Dolan's books and read all of them. I don't know whether 8, 9, 10, 12, something like that. Plus watch the documentaries. And there's other books and other docs. Very readable. They can just, those that don't like to read, I know reading is out of fashion, just watch docs. You can watch docs for weeks on this subject. They can all, in a relatively short amount of time, become actually literate on the history of the UAP phenomena and go out in front of the public and the campaign and say, this is my thinking on that. And what we end up with in January of 2025 is a bunch of people elected to office that have at least conveyed their thinking about how they're going to govern in the post-disclosure world. And guess what? This particular issue is nonpartisan as it gets. Almost no effort is being made to make it partisan. In the Senate, in the House Oversight Subcommittee hearing, at least 3 of the members went out of their way to say this is nonpartisan, and it is, and they conducted it that way. And so here you have the most important issue in the history of the human race available to these 2,000 candidates to address in a nonpartisan way, intelligently, thoughtfully, without serving a political agenda. Oh my God. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine turning on a debate, anticipation of sitting back and enjoying the campaign thinking of these people on the subject of extraterrestrials and realizing they're going to give you some thoughtful, intelligent responses. Oh my Lord, you just get a pizza, get some beer, sit down, relax. It's going to be wonderful. Or we cannot have those hearings and not get disclosure. And the next 12 months is going to be hell on earth. Just saying. Just a thought. All right. We are on the verge of confirming the most important information in the history of the human race. And we have a very good opportunity to allow our entire election to address it from start to finish, starting from around February, which is still too damn early. We need to go to the parliamentary system, I'm telling you. We can't afford democracy at this level, this type. Two-party system, it costs billions of bucks, whatever. That's right before us. It's up to Mark Warner, ultimately. I could be wrong. I mean, I could be overestimating the power of the chairman of that committee. It's really up to Warner and Rubio. They are co-chairs. Let me be clear here. They are co-chairs. That's the way it's treated. And ultimately, the decision we made between the two of them, Democrat and Republican, Rubio and Warner. History is standing on their shoulders right now. They can call those hearings. I do not think anybody can stop them the way our government, not the Supreme Court, not the White House, not Chuck Schumer. He's already on board. Not the Pope. They can call those hearings and nobody can stop them. And they can bring any witnesses they want. And if there's a witness they really need that doesn't come, they could subpoena him. But I think they're going to have people competing to be witnesses. And they will be involved and they will chair and they will be part of one of the most important events in human history, certainly political history of the United States. The most important hearings of all time. They won't last that long. 1 week, that's all we need. History stands on their shoulders right now. Now, am I saying send them thousands of emails or call up their offices and yell and scream at them? No, not at all. I would encourage some interaction. Certainly feel free to generally post out there in social media that you understand that they have that decision to make and you hope they make the right one, which is to call those hearings right away. Just put it out there. If you want to bring it to their attention more directly, but without interrupting their activities, their office, which is what happens sometimes in phone call blitzes and email blitzes and things like that, use Twitter. I call it Twitter. It's always going to be Twitter to me. I'm sorry. Sue me. Because I believe both Rubio and Warner have Twitter accounts. I should have confirmed that before I talked to you today. I didn't. I'm going to go. One of them does for sure. And I think both do. And so what you do, because they don't have direct message, DMs, almost. And this is true of journalists. There's tons of journalists out there that are writing about the subject. They have Twitter accounts. And there are a number of politicians that have spoke to the subject, whether it's Burchett or Carson or Gallego or Kirsten Gillibrand or whatever. Most of them have Twitter accounts. And you can't DM them. What you can do is you can right, Senator Gillibrand or whatever, and then send a message and it turns up on their feed. It's a great thing. Now, are they going to read it? They don't read their feeds. Their staff does. I assure you, somebody in the staff reads the feed because they learn a lot from those feeds. And if they learn something that's relevant, they will pass it on to their boss. So yeah, a couple of thousand at so-and-so's heading on in there, to Warner and Rubio saying, we're ready for the hearings, hold the hearings. We can handle the truth. It's good. We're good. Thank you so much for all you've done so far. And if you want to send it to some other members of the House or what you do, just spread it. It's a very simple, non-intrusive way to get a message across. I happen to think that Twitter is one of the most important activist tools of all time, even though it does have its ups and downs and issues. Still, it's incredible technology. And it's gold for activism, which is why I hope it doesn't become so dysfunctional that it disappears. It's nothing against TikTok. It's just that Twitter is really the activist tool of its time right now, not Facebook, not TikTok, but Twitter. And use it. I do. So that is kind of where we are. I'm trying to think if there's any other aspects of this that you should know. Well, yeah. All right. Promo time. It's promo time. I think I've got about 12 minutes. 12 minutes of promo. No problem. Promo 1. Daniel Sheehan, the legendary civil rights activist for 55 years. Harvard doctorate, law, a couple other doctorates in there. In the 20th century, was involved in some of the most significant cases, including pleading before the Supreme Court. He went west. He set up the Rivera Institute. He's back. He touched on the issue in 1976, 77, then kind of laid low, re-entered the issue in 1994 in support of John Mack, then kind of stepped back a little bit, but got involved with Stephen Greer's projects and was legal counsel there. Then stepped back a little bit, but not much. And he's been riding along with this issue and part of this issue very much since 2001. Well, now he is in the center of the storm. Daniel Sheehan is all over the place. He's at the IG office at the DOD. He's at the IG office of the intelligence community. He's talking with the Senate Intel Committee. He's talking with the people that are forming the 9-person panel for the White House. He is all over this issue. He has finally established his New Paradigm Institute, which will be is a think tank now, but it's essentially a post-disclosure think tank. Multi-million-dollar funded, hopefully very soon, with an extraordinary board of advisors and what have you, to be part of the scores of think tanks that are going to turn up post-disclosure to provide information thinking regarding how to deal with the post-disclosure world. So Danny is in play big time. He already has an office set up in Washington, D.C., across from the congressional, from the Capitol, and it's being run by Jim Garrison, a civil rights activist and justice activist himself for many years. And look, so you're going to be hearing a lot more from Danny Sheehan. That's fully underway. Paradigm Research Group will soon convert to a nonprofit. Better late than never. But it changed its mission statement from essentially just activism to think tank, small think tank, operating on the other end of the mall, 2 blocks from the White House. Danny's down by the Capitol, on by the White House, and I'm going to be doing some think tank stuff too, but on a smaller scale. All right. But something else has happened that's pretty important. And it is the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, which came together at an Italian restaurant between me and my agent, Dan Harari of Asbury PR, longtime publicist in the film industry, certainly Hollywood, mostly Hollywood, who knew lots and lots of people and was very much in the issue. And we decided to form and create an entity called the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance at hollywooddisclosurealliance.org. I am very happy with this. It could be a big deal. Why? What is it? The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is a fully nonprofit, non-commercial entity. Its nonprofit status will be effectuated within a very short amount of time. It is fundamentally a networking entity. It will make no money. It will sell nothing. It will have no subscriptions, no cost. It is a network, a specialized networking entity designed specifically to fit its time. It's specialized in that sense, unusual. What is it networking? The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance was set up to network everyone in the entertainment industry that is interested in this issue, respects this issue, understands this issue, and is willing to put their name and bio out front with all of the citizen researchers, journalists, activists, documentarists, witnesses, and dare I say contactees that have put a lot of time and grade, right? They worked on this. They've been dealing with this, to interface those two so that they can come together to help inform the world in the post-disclosure era. And to some degree, now, as we lead to disclosure, it's already happening. So the way it's designed is cool, right? The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance will have a board of directors, which could grow to 20 or 30 people. Right? And these board of directors will have a legal connection to the nonprofit, limited role in the sense that they will meet a couple times a year. The HDA will be run by an executive committee or an executive board composed of 5 individuals. They are Chairman Dan Harari, Executive Director Stephen Bassett, Vice President for Development Jeff Stein, Chief Financial Officer Paul Heineck, and Secretary Anjali Harari. That is the executive board. Now, underneath that is the founding members. Founding members are basically endorsees of this network. And they endorse it by allowing their bio and photo to be put up on the website. But we have 2 sections. We have the entertainment industry founding members, and we have the UAP, essentially UAP, citizen science researcher activist founding members. All right. And then underneath that will be the supporting members. Anyone that donates $1 or more to the HDA will be listed alphabetically as a supporting member. Those that I think we haven't got it approved yet, but those that donate more than 1,000 or more will probably be bold-faced. And then underneath that are subscribers. These are simply people that subscribe to get information from time to time. They're not a founding member, they're not a board member, they could just be anybody, and they will get information. And maybe they may decide they want to be a founding member. That is the structure. Now, the networking that takes place will be along these lines. The board, which is essentially people of a little bit more better known, a little more substance, a little more longer careers, they will be networking because the board is divided up into film industry board members and UAP board members. There will be networking going on there. On the film industry founding member section, you're going to have networking going on within the industry people. Why? Because a founding member will go to the website and see other members of the industry that are saying, hey, I am into this issue. I respect this issue. I'm working on this. And they, oh, good. I can work with you. Right. And so we're facilitating content creation there. But then probably the most important networking will occur between the film industry founding members and the citizen research activists, journalists, documentarians, the UAP side. Because on one, the film industry can say, these people are people I need to talk to. I want to do a doc. I want to do a series, but I don't understand this issue. My assistant doesn't understand this issue. These people, they know this issue. They've been studying it for 10, 20, 30 years. But I haven't been able to interact with them because in between the film industry and the entire UAP community has been the truth embargo, a wall, right? A wall built by the government to keep those two apart, because if they came together in substantive ways to a certain degree, it could threaten the truth embargo, and that was not government policy. And of course, on the other direction as well, people that are in the UAP world, naturally underfunded, struggling, and having to deal with ridicule and crap for most of their lives on the subject, suddenly they can look across in that other section and go, these people are in the industry. They produce, they direct, they're actors, they're producers, they have funding, whatever, and they publicly say, we're into this. All right? So I can contact them. And we're going to have a way for these people to get in touch with each other in an appropriate way. We're not going to publish all the contact information, but they will be able to connect to the others by going through the executive committee. In no time, we expect the number of directors to grow to at least 30. And I would not be surprised within a few months, we do not have well over 100 members, founding members of the film industry, and 100 founding members in the UAP world. There's no other networking entity quite like it except one. And this is the model, the general model on which we created this. And one of the reasons we did is because my partner, Dan Harari, was the publicist for this particular organization that was founded over 30 years ago. Check it out. It's called the Environmental Media Association, created in a much bigger way. Dan and I bootstrapped the HDA with not a lot of bucks. But the Environmental Media Association was founded by Norman Lear and his wife. And I think they started it off with $1 million awards dinner. And of course, every big shot in town got on board. Why? Because at the time they were interfacing the film industry with the entire environmental activist world so that they could communicate in messaging and know who to talk to, right? And break down the barriers. Not as a matter of censorship, not to write anything, but rather to assist the creation of content by bringing together people that maybe have a difficult time identifying who should I talk to, who can I work with. And that is now 30 years over 30 years old and doing just fine. Go to the EMA, Environmental Media Association, and look at who's on their board, right? And you have an idea of how the HDA is structured. Not quite the same, but similar. It's designed more specifically for this unique situation. Because you see, when the Environmental Media Association was formed to network these two together, the United States government did not have a 60-year policy that there was no environment. Why are you advocating about the environment? There is no environment. What are you talking about? Now, the government admitted there was an environment, so it was different. We have a different problem here. And to make that point and drive it home, and I'll finish with this. Recently, of course, I said there's content in various stages of development all over the film industry right now. You're about to get a fire hose of nonfiction on the subject. Thank God, including a little something from me, nothing huge, but something, is that the film industry has feasted on the ET issue since 1952. Nearly 600 films, including extraterrestrial sci-fi films, of course. There are many other sci-fi films. It's a vast genre, but I'm just talking about the ones that had ETs in them. Those 600 films, counting ticket sales and product sales, television licensing, advertising revenues, and so forth, have generated for the film industry or the content industry upwards of $200 billion. Great. And films about ETs literally dominate the highest grossing films of all time. Good. I'm pleased and happy. However, with the exception of one film about the work of Erich von Däniken way back in the 80s, which is kind of ET connected, in all of these years from 52 on, not a single documentary on the ET subject has ever found itself in distribution on the large screen. Not one. Why? Because you put this subject, nonfiction documentary, this subject on big giant screens in cities all over the country, you're giving it gravitas and energy. You're saying this thing is important. This is real. And the film industry kind of knew that making a movie about fictional aliens was cool and lucrative, but doing documentaries about it and putting them on the big screen might offend some in the government by being a concern for national security. I have no beef here. I have no beef. But I should also point this out, that by and large, this is a political issue. And documentaries about this subject are invariably going to be political. And there's going to be some very political documentaries because the truth embargo was totally political. And some people say, well, it's like a documentary. They don't make any money. Guess what? The highest grossing documentary of all time, if you exclude the IMAX stuff, which was sort of a doc, but it was IMAX and they charged $50 or whatever the hell, just put those aside. Highest grossing documentary of all time was a political documentary that grossed in modern dollars in excess of $400 million. It cost about $7 million to make. What documentary were I referring to? Fahrenheit 9/11. Were the production values incredible? They were okay. Right? Was it funny? It was funny, but it wasn't, fall on the floor laughing funny. But did it have a political subject with a lot of interest? Oh, yeah. The political subject of Fahrenheit 9/11 is the election of George W. Bush, which was on the mind of a lot of people. Guess what? The disclosure issue is not on the mind of X number of people in the United States that were concerned about who was going to be the next president. The disclosure issue is on the mind of the entire human race. 8 billion people. You think a political documentary about disclosure or the truth embargo could outdo Fahrenheit 9/11? I think so. Which is why, not too long ago, one of the top people in this town, a AA lister, J.J. Abrams, out of his studio Bad Robot, did a documentary series on this subject called UFO for Showtime. Another round of that is in the works. And just more recently, AAA lister in this town, Steven Spielberg, put out a 4-part documentary series on this issue called Encounters. Both documentaries could have benefited with a little consulting from some of my colleagues. Well, hopefully the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance will assist in providing that consulting and other things. Again, HDA is not in the business to make money. It is in the business of networking people to create content separately and other deals, their deals, and very likely make a great deal of money. God bless them. I assure you the UAP community could really benefit from making some money. And the HDA is happy to assist. The film industry will also make a lot of money. But, and I'll close with this, the day after disclosure, there's 8 billion people on this planet that need to find out and know what's going on and get up to speed on this new reality as quickly as possible. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of content. And the film industry is going to be absolutely critical in providing that content, and the HDA is going to help. Thank you for your time. Richard, I love you.